I think Newcastle will certainly have to show a bit of, well, we didn't roll over and have our tummies tickled too easily. Like, we put up a bit of a fight. There's got to be a little bit of that because, I mean, just to dip into the online stuff, and I know that's not always a kind of good bar to measure things, but the fan base are furious with what's going on, and in many cases not always maybe taking into account all the kind of normal things that go on in a transfer. This is an unusual business. Liverpool have obviously got an interest in the player knows that, and that just happens. That happens through agents. It happens all the time. It happens in all deals, and it will be happening in the ones that Newcastle have either been involved in recently or are about to try and make happen. So that is just a dance that goes on, but we'll have to wait and see. I just think Eddie Howe will have to manage a squad over the next, certainly until January, and it just feels really difficult if he's got a player there who just doesn't want to be there. We know sometimes these things can be brushed under the carpet, and we've seen it ourselves with Coutinho. For a few months, you can maybe get away with it, and in his case, he had a really good 3 or 4 months before he eventually leaves, but it just feels like maybe the Isak one's gone a little bit too far.
Yeah, the Coutinho comparison keeps coming up, and I think it's an interesting one, but there are, as with all things that seem similar, just because they're a bit similar doesn't mean they're the same. And I'll come to you on it, Keir, in a minute. I'm just thinking on how to make my point here. But the thing which happened with Coutinho, which I remember vividly, and what made Liverpool more determined to thwart the player, I think, at that point, and Barcelona, was it came really late in the window, if I remember rightly. The manager from Liverpool, we don't have time to replace him. And also, I think the money, the amount we put down, Barcelona were very, we're not paying that. They were offering like 80s and 90s, where we were going 140s. It was a haggle. They weren't taking seriously our will to keep him. So I don't quite think it's the same. I think Newcastle have had fair notice on this. The problem they've got is their own lack of competence in the transfer market to date, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you look at it from the Newcastle perspective, which we've got to do, he's got 3 years left on his deal. And that is a big thing. It's not 1 year, it's not 2 years. As it stands, I think the PSR compliant, he's their main man. He's their Salah. They absolutely love him. So they're going to feel as if they're taking a step back instead of a step forward. They're going to feel as if they should be aiming towards Liverpool and aiming towards the top of the title. And this move of their main man going to Liverpool feels like a huge step back. They need to get in the Champions League. They need to stay up there. Isak is the perfect man to do that. So that's the Newcastle's perspective on it. However, he doesn't want to be there.
He
does not want to be there. His mind is made up, and you're not going to get the best out of him. And you're probably not going to get the best out of his teammates. There's probably already a bit of awkwardness on the Newcastle tour that he's not there. There's probably going to be events they have planned for him to be there. There's probably going to be fans who are expecting to see him. The whole mood around the club has changed, and you're not going to get the best out of him. And that kind of money, a British record transfer fee, can be a Coutinho moment. We transformed our side with that money. We went and got Alisson, and we went and got Van Dijk, and everything changed. And then we became a top team. So if I was a Newcastle fan, I'd start to accept it, and I'd start to think past it. And I'd start to think, how do we turn that money into a team that genuinely competes with Liverpool and get back at them that way, as opposed to cutting our nose off to spite our face and keeping a player that you're not going to get the best out of this season.
But the mood of it, and I do think the mood of their thinking is important, because the ownership seem very, very political in the way they're approaching this. It's just give us fucking Sesko. Honestly, it seems to be boiling down to that, whether that's out of a slight sense of desperation or what have you. But if the news broke tonight that Sesko was going to be a Geordie, I think it changes things very, very much in our favour, quite frankly. It makes the natives a lot happier, less restless in the northeast.
Yeah, for this to accelerate in terms of moving into kind of the direction where it becomes in Liverpool's kind of favour, then yeah, they need to get people over the line. There's no doubt about it.
But a good one.
Yeah, and a good one. And if that doesn't happen, if they don't get at least one, if not two, then it does become more difficult, because I think they'll say to him, listen, we would have considered letting you go, but I mean, surely even you have to understand, if we can't bring a player in, then, it feels really difficult. But whether he'd accept that, not too sure. Probably not. But ultimately, there's almost a selling thing.
Who do you mean Sesko himself?
Isak, whether he would put up with that, in a sense of, well, if we could have signed someone, then we would have considered, but we've not been able to get those players done and dusted. The thing is, though, And I suppose all clubs struggle with this or all have this in the back of their minds, and it's about striking a balance. But in terms of potential signings, you would have to have a little think about it. If Isak can't get out of the club, it doesn't look particularly great, does it, to other potential people who might be coming in and thinking about Newcastle just being a bit of a stepping stone. Now, they won't like to hear that, but that is how certain players will view them. They won't necessarily see them as a destination. They'll see them as maybe the next thing before they go onto a bigger club.
Look at Livramento, Guimarães, Tonali. What are they thinking? Even Anthony Gordon, you go, whoa! I didn't realise I was literally a prisoner.
Yeah, it's and listen, obviously there's a contract thing, and maybe if Isak had his time again and his people had the time again, they'd look at that 6-year deal and they'd look at the fact that there's no release clause in there because it was big money. It was 63 million quid, and they must have thought, well, we're not going to be here forever. This is not going to be the end destination. So maybe they'd reflect on that as well a little bit. But I do think they've got to get the balance right, because if you're just making someone stay, and he's made it abundantly clear, and listen, Liverpool have had a little bit of this with Luis Diaz. I think, obviously it is slightly different, and that the players are at different ages and they're offering maybe different things. But Luis Diaz, I think Liverpool were more than happy for him to stay. They'd made it clear, listen, we want you to stick around, but the player made it clear that he'd rather go and spend his time elsewhere, earn a few more quid. You understand it. Listen, all parties are happy. So I know there's differences. Newcastle aren't happy. They don't want to see Isak move on. But there's this optics thing where if you just play this game where it ends in the player just being so unhappy, he's on strike, he's refusing to play, that doesn't send a good signal out.
This is a big one, though, the on-strike thing. The reports are coming out that he's not reporting for Newcastle duties. Now, they've left him at home for an injury, which he didn't have. But if you have got an injury, you're reporting to the training ground and you're seeing the club doctor. Now, I don't know how much truth's in it, but it's what's being reported online is he's not reporting for Newcastle duties, which means he's not turning up for training or he's not turning up for treatment or whatever it is. But that's massive, because there's a player being unhappy and, as you say, still getting the best out of him for 3 months and still turning up, and there's a player who's literally on strike and down on his tools and saying, this is my chance to go and win the Champions League. You are blocking the move. I am not turning up. If that's the case, Eddie Howe and the owner have got a massive problem on their hands, because even if Eddie Howe does want to keep him and your theory's right and the owner wants to sell him, or even if you're right and the owner wants to get rid and Eddie Howe wants to keep, it just can't continue like that. At some point, the player's got to turn up for training and start playing with his teammates.
I hope you're enjoying this free show at the moment. Loads of excellent, exciting stuff on the Anfield app. If you want to be part of the whole thing, you can download the Anfield app and go from there. Or you can subscribe via the YouTube membership as well for video-only content and other bits and pieces. We love doing these shows. We love that you watch them. So come, be part of the journey with us.